Scleroderma, the Raynaud's and digital ulcers we're going to present, and our lupus group. So I'm thinking because pain is going to go at 8:30, that would be okay. We'd start with lupus probably. And then we'll have a question and answer at the end of it, at the end of each presentation and at the end as well of the session, because it's only a couple of months before the town hall or for our meeting. And then our next town hall, April 15th, we'll carry on again with more of our working group updates. So thanks to everyone who presented in the last one and for this one. I'll end that and I'll pass it over to you, Wells.
Can I just say, just before we get into these, too much more, sorry, Wills, you were queued up and then I interrupted. But just to say for all the working group leaders who are on right now, we've been updating the OMERACT website. So if you're looking for, and the handbook is so close to being up on the website, we're like very, very close. I think we're going to start releasing some chapters before I hold off on releasing the whole thing because there's just a bit of a delay between some. But just to say, all of the forms and the emails you've been getting from me, here's your shared folder form or something like along those lines, are on the website. So if you go to the OMERACT website and go to resources and go to downloadable forms, we've made the forms so that they follow each of the checklists. So depending where each of the working groups are, domains, instruments, the methods ones I'm working on right now, you can just follow the checklist, and anything you may need, you can just click on and download right from the website. So if you're ever looking for anything, that is probably your best place to go. I mean, also email me or Bev and we have all of them, but also just to say that spot on the website is a pretty great resource if you're stuck or you're not sure what the next step is or what form you need or tag review, stuff like that. But that's all I want to say, because I was like, oh, some working group leaders are on here. So just as a reminder. Sorry, over to you, Wills. Thank you for letting me interrupt.
And we're not, Ernest, just to, I think you weren't there yesterday, but we're going to have yours after 8:30, if that's okay, just so that Philip Mees can join. Thank you. Over to you, Wills.
Everyone see that?
Yeah, you can blow it. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Great. Okay, yeah, so I'll just be giving our update on the OMERACT lupus working group. And I'll go through all our progress so far. So first of all, we have completely finalized our domain generation. There was a bunch of edits and reviewing that we've been doing over the past few months, but it is completely finished. And we've published a recent publication of our scoping review that shows a lot of that, but our most our qualitative research, our focus group publication is coming. We're working on it. We'll get that out soon. That will have everything finalized and shown in there. And so these are the 27 domains we've come up with, if anyone's interested in looking over them. It took a lot of discussion trying to narrow this down, but this is our end result that we're going to proceed with to our Delphi. Let's let people read it for a second before I move on.
Sorry, Bev, did you say we were doing questions as we go or question after each group? I don't want to break the rules that.
Well, I think after each group.
Okay, great.
Have an hour, and that, it's so people then remember. So I said we would do both after each group, and then we'd also have, if there's any questions about the update.
Okay.
Stuff. That's what I was thinking. Because I think we have lots of time.
Great. Well, I'll keep going. We've also finished our definitions. Those have been finalized. And one of the interesting things that we've done with our definitions after talking to our working group and many of our members is we've decided to go with both a kind of a literature definition, a more complex one that our clinicians and researchers really want, really explains all the concepts, especially if you're an expert in this. And when you get to the measurement stage, how you define this really well in your concept, we thought that was really important. But as some of our experts have said, and some of the people we have who work with like translating or we're working with more simpler lay language, they said that some of these definitions, even though they weren't usually too complex, they were still a bit lot, and we were worried about a few things, so we came up with simple definitions as well, and those will both be presented together in the Delphi, so everyone, patients and researchers, clinicians, see both definitions. But if you have trouble understanding the first one, you can read the second one and still understand it, so no one is confused, but it also has all the information there for anyone who does want extra detail. So that's one interesting new change we've done with the lupus group in our Delphi that we're going to start with. The third thing I wanted to talk about was we have decided on translations for the Delphi, and I don't think other groups have done this yet, but a lot of our members had concerns saying that their lupus patients, can't participate in a Delphi only offered in English, and very few of their patients could, and so they want to get a more holistic representation globally. We thought and we felt we had to translate it, and so we went with the 12 most common used languages and those that our working group members could recruit patients for. And so we've chosen these 12 languages: English, French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, German, Cantonese, Mandarin, Japanese, Korean, Hebrew, and Arabic. So we're currently having our Delphi translated into those languages right now. And we will offer all this Delphi will occur simultaneously in all 12 languages, and all the results will be compiled together and done. So that is one of our big changes initiatives going forward, to be more inclusive. And we're hoping we can begin in round 1. We've already received our ethics board approval. They just have to review the translations as soon as we get those, and those are being done by a translation service right now. So we're hoping to get that soon. Delphi is already built on REDCap, just have to input those translations, which mostly copy and paste. And we're hoping we get going in April so that we can have our results for the OMERACT 2025 conference in Barcelona. And so we can, there we were hoping to review the initial results of the first round, as well as the suggested domains. Really, we'd love to have a great discussion there of all the domains that have been suggested to add in the first round, and work with all of our members and decide how we can use those, which ones we need to add, which ones we don't need to. And then we were also wanting to discuss there how we assess sensibility and how we narrow down our candidate instruments for our domains, as we want to start thinking of that even while the Delphi is going, because including we can't do full systematic reviews for every single instrument and their measurement properties, as that would take too long for each domain. We want to decide, what's the best method to narrow this down. As I've heard, some groups have gone with literature reviews, scoping reviews to work down, identify all the candidate instruments and work through those with some sort of sensibility filter, while other groups have more just used expert discussion to quickly narrow this down. And we wonder what's the best approach, both feasible and covering all the bases as well. And that's all that I have. Thanks.
That's amazing, especially the translations. Holy moly. Are you also translating all of your definitions along with?
Yeah.
And in REDCap, sorry, I have so many questions just because of the Delphi piece. And for anyone who's worked with me while we did Delphi Manager knows my stress level around that. But Susanna Proudman especially. When you go into REDCap, and I don't know it as well, how do you see the definitions for each of the domains? Is it like a hover, or is it? You're on mute, Wills. I'm sorry. Wait, I can't.
Sorry,
there
yeah.
we go. That's okay.
We've decided to put it straight in the text. So we'll have each domain on its own page. So you rate each domain separately. You're not looking at multiple. We want them focused on each one. And you'll have like the name of the domain at the top, and then you'll have both definitions. And then it just says, please rate on the 1 to 9 Likert scale, as well as the image of the Likert scale in the 3 categories, like low importance, minimal, or some importance, and importance. So that's what each domain looks like. And we have the definitions right before the radio buttons where they can grade it, actually.
Oh, that's awesome.
I
know we talked. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, just to point out that we don't expect that. I've been talking to Wills many times about this. That's not it's amazing, but it's not an OMERACT expectation to translate into all these multiple languages, obviously.
Yeah. No,
it's a cost.
But definitely amazing. It'll be a great example, certainly, to share with other groups when you're done. And I know we talked a little bit at ACR about some qualification criteria to get into the Delphi, or maybe participants that you were inviting. Did you guys decide to go ahead with that? Or if so, what does that look like? And that's my last question. I'll hand it over.
Well, right now, we're still trying to like recruit more members as well for our clinician researchers to participate. Right now, everyone in our working group is our main participants, and that's 260 members. So we have a good number there already. But we have been looking into other experts that aren't in our working group and making a list of ones that from around the world that anyone who our working group has recommended that says they're an expert in lupus or know this, and we've been working that, but we don't have any strict qualification criteria yet. It's been more just a judgmental, like any recommendations on any experts we've seen lots of great work from.
And for the PRP stakeholder group?
And for the PRP stakeholder group, we will be recruiting through our working group members. So all of our clinicians who have patients, they will be sent the link that they can send out to their patients. So they have there won't be any the patients self-declare the diagnosis, but they don't have to actually show proof. We're trusting that they have a diagnosis of lupus and that they only received this link because their clinician that we, as part of the working group, has shared this link with them.
Perfect. Thank you.
Suzanne?
Hi, Wills. Very impressive. I just wanted to ask, I presume it's very likely that you've got representatives from the Asia Pacific lupus cohort, because they have access to all the Asian countries, and you've got so many languages there. It's a fantastic opportunity to recruit some of those patients because they've got thousands of patients.
Absolutely, yeah, we do. We have China, we have Japan, we have Korea, we have quite a few there, and that have, I think, Philippines as well. We have and they've all said that they've already given patients for our focus groups, and they're willing to get us a lot more here, especially with these translations. They said they can recruit a good amount. So absolutely, yeah.
Amazing.
And I know, sorry, I said that was my last question, but I do have one more because it was something Dorcas brought up on the last call. And I know she's here, so she can probably articulate better than I can. But she talked a little bit about sharing the results of round 1 at the meeting and how that could potentially affect future rounds. I don't know if anyone remembers that conversation better than I do. That's pretty much the limit of what I remember. Bev, do you remember talking about that? Or
is there, but so I don't know. It's about a bias. Right?
Oh, there she is. There she is.
Yeah, no, it's exactly what you're saying. It's just that have they considered that if they present round 1, then it might be biasing people in their response to round 2 and 3. Or are you hoping to get through all your rounds before OMRACT?
No.
We don't think it's possible that we'll be able to get through all the rounds, unfortunately. But that is a great point. I don't think we have actually considered that. And I think we weren't sure about including the results of round 1. I think I'll bring that to discuss and whether we want to put that. I think what we really want to talk about is the suggested domains. I think that we could maybe discuss. I don't think that would influence, because that we do need to discuss around, and if we add any domains in, but not showing the round 1 results until everyone with round 2, I think that could be important. So I think we'll definitely discuss that and review it, but just the suggested domains we want to consider.
Yeah, the new ones to add in. That's good.
Yeah,
you've done so much amazing work with your bin and winnowing as well, that even when you get suggested domains, it might be really easy for your group to say, we already made all of these decisions back here, and this is why, so that maybe it'll actually fly through really easy, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. We're hoping there's not too much work and we can jump right into it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you've had so many working group meetings about those definitions and domains, and so you'll be.
I think we've been updating that list for over a year now. Yeah. It's been just updating and constantly. Yeah.
And Wills, I would only add to, and I know you're doing this too, but just keeping track that if it does come up as a suggestion after round 1 and you do have a reason why you didn't include it, I would still add that, just keep your documents going. Maybe there's some really good reason why it is popping up at the end of round 1 that you hadn't thought about. So just reviewing them carefully, and then tracking your decisions.
Is there on their tracker, Shauna, do we have a column?
Yeah, there's actually a between round tracker.
Right, right.
And so I would be using that
Yeah.
as soon as you
So-
head into round one, and that's to track, scores, but also things you're taking out, things you're putting in, stuff like that. I would recommend. I think
Members.
it's in the Delphi protocol in the appendix. If not, let me know if it's not found, and I'll make sure it's somewhere to be found. But
Amazing. Thank you.
that's great. Thanks, Will. That's a lot of work. I know it's a huge
Yeah.
group.
Congratulations. That's really awesome.
Thanks.
So it's only 8:20. Maybe Susanna, do you mind going next so that we go?
Can I just ask a quick question before we move on?
Sorry, Dorte, I'm sorry. You had your hand up and you said yes, and then we apologies.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to your translation process because I'm kind of curious on how you did it, because usually you will do like forward and backward translation. That's quite a big job, and you have 12 languages. So can you just shortly share with us how you did it?
Yeah, so we, for feasibility and financial reasons, we could not do everything we want, cross-cultural or anything. It was absolutely not possible. So but everyone, it was really strongly desired from all our working group members that we have these translations. So what we did is we went to our ethics board and went to ask what was the way that we could improve this without spending a ton. And they said if we go through a licensed translation service, we give them the English. We wrote it all in English. We give them the English, the definitions and the whole Delphi written out. They will translate it to the other 11 languages and give us this a translation version of each document back. And so that's what we're doing. And then I'm just going to copy that over into our Delphi, just copy and paste directly over everything. So it's very simple. Give it to a translation service. They translate to the other 11 languages. We don't have time or feasibility to go back and forth. Unfortunately, we are going to, though, have our working group members who speak these languages and are experts. We are going to send them these translations before we move ahead. So our kind of verification of the translations will be having our working group members who speak them read over it and make sure it's appropriate. There's no major concerns. And then with that, we'll go ahead and have approval. Then we'll keep moving forward.
There was a cost to it.
Yes, there was a cost, and this is the lowest way we can keep the lowest possible. Yeah.
Yeah, great job.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Anyone else? Susanna, over to you for a Raynotes and digital ulcers update.
All right. So I'm assuming you can see my slides.
Yep, perfect.
Here we go. So I was lucky enough to be able to use some of the slides actually that came from the beautiful online voting process that Shauna helped set up, which I guess underpins what this group has been working on most recently. The Scleroderma Vascular Working Group has been going for 4 years, working hard to develop a core domain set for future trials of interventions for scleroderma or systemic sclerosis related vasculopathy, which is broadly separated into Raynaud's phenomenon and digital ulcers, which are complications of scleroderma associated with significant morbidity and potentially even mortality, especially in the case of digital ulcers. And therapies have found to generally be wanting, probably due to limitations of outcome measures in clinical trials as much as anything. So capturing the patient perspective and undergoing a more formal OMREC process to develop core domain sets and ultimately select the best instruments has been the objective of this working group for some time. We expected there might be some overlap. Certainly the populations are very similar and the interventions are often very similar, control groups and even outcomes can be very similar because obviously they're closely linked and primarily related to digital ischemia. But we have considered them separately really from the beginning on the basis that clinical trials typically focus on one or other of these associated but distinct manifestations. These are the leads in the working group. We cover 4 continents. We have 4 co-chairs who come from 3 different countries, or 3 continents actually. 2 fellows, one from the UK, one from Canada, and 2 patient research partners, one from the UK and one from Australia. And this was what was summarised in the recent online polling, which is an overarching view of all the steps completed so far. So this is 4 years' work, and in fact, even work prior to that, it's been all jammed into one screen. So it started with some really detailed, comprehensive work by Drs. Hughes and Pauling in the UK, qualitative research to capture the impact and burden of scleroderma, Raynaud's and digital ulcers. And then this was the jumping off point to scoping reviews, individual reviews to identify potential domains for Raynaud's phenomenon and digital ulcers performed by the 2 fellows. So by now we had about 8 papers, I think, exploring the patient's experience of Raynaud's and digital ulcers. We then did an international Delphi, 2 international Delphi surveys to identify the core domains that were considered most important using the usual criteria for selecting domains to include in a 1-year clinical trial of Raynaud's or digital ulcers respectively. And this allowed us to settle on draft core domain sets. We spent a fair bit of time developing definitions for all of these domains. And then this lovely online summary of all this work was put out to a vote for endorsement of the final core domain sets by the OMRAC community. And these are the endorsed core domain sets. And you can see that there are core domains in both domain sets, digital ulcers and Raynaud's phenomenon, which are similar but not exactly the same, be they pathophysiological manifestations, life impact, resource use, and obviously death. And in each case, there are domains for future consideration, and they were included here because they were either deemed important in the qualitative work or the scoping reviews, maybe by one stakeholder group, but not the other. There were a couple of domains that we brought through to the core domain sets, which, whilst they didn't meet the 70% threshold by one stakeholder group, the work that had been done before and the sort of expert opinion was such that they were considered so important by patients in particular that we brought them across anyway. So they were slightly unexpected things like pain intensity. So that did pose us a few problems, but we went with the, I guess, the expert opinion. As much, and the patient's lived experience as much as anything. So overall, there were 250 members of the OMRAC community from 6 continents who voted. And you can see that the response was overwhelmingly an endorsement for both core sets, with 98% of both groups voting yes. So what are we doing next? We're embarking on instrument selection. And we have taken the somewhat pragmatic approach of looking at what's available rather than going in great depth with further scoping reviews. There's actually been some parallel work with the Scleroderma Clinical Trials Consortium, and there's an overlap in membership of these groups. I'm not actually on that, but many of the members are. So I can't speak to that systematic review that's already been performed looking at instrument psychometrics, other than to say that I've been reliably informed that it's involved really quite an enormous amount of work. So that will be extremely helpful in directing us to potentially suitable instruments. Because we're having to run these in parallel, which kind of doubles the workload, we're going to start by looking at generic instruments, perhaps using instruments that have sort of deemed to be ready already by the OMRAC tags. So some of the promised domains, such as pain intensity, fatigue, physical function, have already been through an OMRAC process. And the others, ideally a disease-specific instrument, and we'll select those which are more likely to go through the OMRAC filter more easily so that we can try and get this off the ground. And of course, there's a standard process, which is Shauna outlined, is beautifully spelt out with a range of resources and forms to complete on the website. And they more or less follow the process of domain match and feasibility, going to the literature, as I mentioned already, in order to complete the summary of measurement properties tables for each measure. But it also involves some surveys to look at the domain match, to look at feasibility, both amongst the working group and patients. And then we will have to start looking at some other domains for which there are not obvious instruments, or that we may need to look a little bit harder amongst the existing instruments to see what we can potentially bring through to run it through the OMRAC filter, and whether we need to do any further original work to validate these measures in this two manifestations. So this is what we're planning on doing, which I thought was potentially one of the objectives of these town hall presentations, which is to talk about what we hope to do at OMRAC 2025 in Spain. This is really the first pass at an agenda, which has all the usual things as you'd expect, done in very fast time, given we don't want to be talking for too long, so that we can leave as much time possible for discussion. So we'll be recapping some of these core domain sets and our process at that progress at that point for OMRAC instrument selection, and perhaps run through some potential instruments as I've already outlined. We haven't got much further yet in terms of spelling out exactly how we would like to direct this discussion about strategy, next steps and research agenda, but there will be a bit more work on that so that we can determine what we want to get out of the SIG, and ideally develop some structured questions to direct the discussions. And that's it from me.
That is amazing, as always. Thank you. Questions? You can.
Hi, thank you, Suzanne. That's amazing. Great work. I'm wondering, when you're looking at instruments, so you say instrument 1, instrument 2, have you selected which domain you're going to be tackling? So the instruments will always be linked to one of your core domains. And have you decided which core domain to look at?
We haven't specifically decided. We've asked the fellows to look at our domains and the available instruments that they identified, both through the systematic reviews that they did for this working group that I mentioned on one of the first slides, but also they were intimately involved in the SCTC work, systematic review that I was talking about before. So they're very familiar with the different instruments. I suspect it will probably be, as I said before, domains that might have already been addressed through the tag. So pain intensity seems to be a fairly obvious one. And that was sort of number one pathophysiological manifestation in both core domain sets. And hand function is another quite well validated instrument in both Raynaud's and digital ulcers, although, as I haven't seen the data, I look forward to the presentations from our fellows. They'll be what we'll be predominantly focusing on, I think, for OMRAC 25.
Okay.
And then, you know, health rate and quality of life always comes up in both of them as well, and the promise instruments of some validation through the tag as well. So we might select that as
we haven't tackled health and quality of life. We have physical functioning, fatigue, pain intensity, and pain impact are the four.
Pain impact, right.
Yeah, but that's Good. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Peter Merkel's wish would be that they do all the domains at once. He likes to do everything at once. He's not here, so we can't ask him. But yeah, he likes to. His wish would be they would do all domains quickly. So
Yeah, I mean, some things will have instruments that are easily identified, and other things won't. So,
Yeah.
one of the things that came through in all the qualitative work very strongly was this concept of adaptation, the adaptations that patients make in order to manage their lives, and to accommodate. Raynaud's is a good example because it's something that comes and goes depending on the milieu, the context, the preventative mitigating strategies that they employ, and all of those things amount to some kind of adaptation in their life in order to be able to live with Raynaud's. With digital ulcers, it's sort of even more pervasive because they're there more consistently when they're actually present. So I don't imagine there's a tool for that specifically. So that's going to be interesting.
There's actually, you might want to look at Monique Gignac has some work done on that. She's thought about that a lot in terms of measurement. And then the response shift literature will touch on that as well, because that's one of the strategies for response shift.
Thanks, Dorcas. We
Yeah.
might come back to you.
And I'd be happy to get you in touch with Monique. She's
we'll send you that. Yeah.
The
Thank you.
fellows were smart too when they were doing their scoping review, looking for domains. Although they didn't report instruments because we say keep them separate, they do have a spreadsheet. As they were going through, they did
Yeah.
note what some of the instruments were. So I think they're going to go back to some of that as well, which is
I think that's
awesome.
a brilliant idea. It's good to keep domains and instruments separate in the process, but yes, if you're sitting there looking at an article, then other groups could learn from that. Just jot down the instrument and set it aside. That's great.
Yes, we've done that before.
Anything else? Amazing. Thank you, everyone. I guess we'll go next, Ernest, for pain, if you're okay, and hopefully Peter Merkel will join at the end then. And if not, he'll come on for the next one, Hidomi. So Ernest, over to you. Thank you.
I think Shamila is.
Oh,
I-
you're doing it, Sharmila? Oh,
You're muted.
There we go. Yes, I'm going to try and do this presentation.
Okay.
So let me quickly work out the sharing. Excuse me a minute. Should work today.
thanks, Sharmila.
Can everyone see?
In a second. Yeah, just blow it up to your full screen. It's there.
You can hit, oh, good. Sorry.
Perfect. Thank
Is
you.
that all right?
Looks great.
Great. So I'm going to present what the UMRAC Pain Working Group has been working on, following on from the work that was presented in 2023 by the UMRAC Pain Working Group then, which I wasn't a part of. And essentially, there was a discussion around the complexity of pain in how it presents in inflammatory arthropathies, and the fact that a lot of the way the pain presents in these arthropathies has a direct impact on the measurement tools or the disease activity measurement tools, and therefore certain types of pain phenotypes that are present in people with inflammatory arthropathies have a direct impact on how pain is measured and how much pain is measured, and act as confounders in research trials or also within the clinic. And essentially, some of the work that was done previous to this, that was published by Tim Pickles, who was a previous OMRAC fellow, was assessing the types of pain phenotypes that were present aside from the typical nociceptive inflammatory pain that is seen in inflammatory arthropathy, which is the nociplastic pain, which is a more recently defined phenotype, which archetypically is a presentation of fibromyalgia, and we all know that secondary fibromyalgia has been well established as present in inflammatory arthropathies and has a direct impact on the measurements of both pain severity as well as pain interference, which are the commonly used pain measurement tools in trials of inflammatory arthropathy conditions. However, these don't necessarily reflect the different pain phenotypes and the impact that these have on the pain severity and interference. And there was some data that was presented at this meeting, which includes some data from Cardiff, from Tim Pickles and Ernest Choi, which demonstrated that there was significantly people who presented with secondary fibromyalgia, which was about 25% of the total population that was studied, also had significantly high disease activity scores. And this was reflected in some of the data from the COE-VITAS registry from Phil Meese, which showed that I think the patients there had significantly increased pain BPI severity scores, and the patients who had these significantly increased BPI pain severity scores were the ones which presented with secondary fibromyalgia symptoms as measured by the WPI and the symptom severity score according to the ACR 2010. The other thing that came out quite strongly in this data was that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, that the disease activity scores were nearly twice as high in people with fibromyalgia. And so the outcome of this meeting was, following this presentation, that there was a consensus that was reached on the need to assess different types of pain as separate phenotypes. And there was general agreement, I think 80% of the attendees agreed that the presence of different types of pain, rather than pain as one thing, is likely to impact the sensitivity of the instruments that are used to measure pain, and therefore specific instruments to measure the other pain phenotypes would be useful going forwards, would be something that should be worked on going forwards. And the attendees did include a number of patient representatives, and there was agreement from the patient representatives with regards to looking for different measurement tools to tease out the nociceptive from the nociplastic or the neuropathic. And then I just wanted to touch very briefly on defining nociplastic pain, where previously there were just two pain types. So it was sort of a binary measure. There was either nociceptive pain or neuropathic pain. And nociceptive pain, we all recognize quite well within inflammatory arthropathies. It is the pain of inflamed joint. It occurs because there's been an insult or injury in the periphery, and that has led to this pain that the patient presents, and usually should resolve when this pain is treated with disease-modifying agents or biologicals or other targeted treatments. However, there is a proportion of patients that continue to describe pain after their inflammation has resolved. And it is this type of pain that we are now trying to define as nociplastic pain. And there have been criteria that have been proposed within the world of chronic pain research for nociplastic pain. And the 4 criteria that have been proposed are pain that lasts for more than 3 months, which becomes by definition chronic or persistent pain. Pain needs to be regional rather than localized, so beyond the regional distribution, which, as we know, can be seen quite commonly with conditions like fibromyalgia. Pain is not entirely explained by nociceptive mechanisms or entirely explained by neuropathic mechanisms. And the definition of neuropathic pain was typically there is a lesion to the somatosensory system. And that is one of the things that is not present in people with inflammatory arthropathy, because typical neuropathic pain would be pain of, say, diabetic neuropathy or people with multiple sclerosis, for example. And this was the reason why this new definition was proposed by this International Association of Study of Pain, which is now a sort of an accepted criteria rather than a definition. And the fourth one, which is quite important, is there is some signs rather than patient-reported symptoms of evoked pain or pain hypersensitivity. And this could be mechanical allodynia or cold allodynia or sensitivity to any of these sensations. And if you fulfilled all of these four criteria, essentially it was called possible nociplastic pain. So the OMERACT, for the OMERACT 2025, the pain working group, again, focused on the fact that pain is complex, it's not simple. And I'm one of the OMERACT fellows for the pain working group this year. And this was what we started doing some work on, is to develop a scoping review protocol, because it was felt that there needs to be a piece of work that can tease out the most appropriate instrument if there was one available. So we are focusing on the candidate instruments for this non-inflammatory nociplastic, or previously known as central pain, tools in inflammatory neuropathy for pain assessment. And we are this is the group that has been involved in discussions around developing of this protocol. I am trying to pull this together at this point in time with lots and lots of support and contributions from all of the people on this slide. And thank you very much to everyone. So this has now been posted at the COMET website, and that's the link for it. What we are hoping to do via the scoping review is to assess all of the instruments that that sort of fit onto that 4-point criteria that I have gone through in the previous slides. And review those instruments, and individual items within instruments may be suitable and may map onto the nociplastic pain definitions, and we will try and pull out some of those items as well, hoping to use the OMERACT methodology and other symptoms which we know are sort of the central symptoms commonly seen, which are mood disturbance, sleep, and cognitive changes, which also impact on pain directly or indirectly, will be pulled out from these from the publications. So we came with a PEACOCK, which was looking at the population concept types of studies, and we're going to look at adults 18 years or older with diagnosis of rheumatoid, psoriatic arthropathy, or axial spondyloarthropathy. So focusing on 3 inflammatory arthropathies. And the publications we are going to look at will contain one of the following terms. And this is one of the issues around pain, is the fact that there are different terms that have been used to express the same sort of symptomatology or symptom complex. So there's nociplastic, non-inflammatory, disproportionate, pain of central sensitization, central pain, discrepancies, multidimensional pain, neuropathic-like pain, or fibromyalgia. And we are hoping to include all of these terms. And I'll leave this for people to have a look at briefly.
I'm just gonna, sorry, Sharmila, just
sorry,
in
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
of time, and we have Peter Merkel joined.
Oh, am I
to
going
get
over
through
time? Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I just was looking at the time and wanted to make sure we
Yeah.
were able to
Okay.
squeeze Peter Merkel in as well. I'm so sorry.
'Cause
No, that's all right.
He only has until 8:55, I think.
Yeah,
that's all
maybe
right.
we can send this out to people and they can have a look.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Thank you.
And then
Thanks,
very
Sean.
quickly, this was what we were going to extract out. And then we have a little agenda that we put together for the upcoming SIG meeting at the OMERACT, where we want to discuss some of these scoping review protocols that we have come through, but also talk about nociplastic pain and scoping of this within the literature as well.
I know, I'm having trouble too.
Amazing. All right, we'll let Peter go next, and then we can have questions after for
Sure.
Yeah.
things.
I will be mercifully short. I'm sorry, I had
I'm
another
going to stop
conflicting
sharing.
call, and I'm going to be in China at the next one. So, Bev, you can't say no to Bev, but you can sometimes delay it 45 minutes. I think Susanna, I hope, presented our work for scleroderma, correct? That was great. So I will be mercifully short, and I have no slides. So the vasculitis group has two things scheduled. We're actually reconsidering a little bit, even at this late date, because of attendance and various issues. The Behçet's disease, Behçet's syndrome, as we like to say, group is has come a long way. We've done, we have published a core set of domains, and we've done a scoping review / meta-analysis of a systematic review, rather, I'm sorry, of instruments for use. And our goal is to start on a couple of things. One will be a project that Gulen Hatemi, who's co-chair and really leading things on minimally clinically important difference and patient acceptable symptom score, sort of that spectrum of work. And actually quite a lot of work has been done, and to bring that and to get some feedback about how to bring that into the OMRAC process and what's next. So that will be part of the SIG for Behçet's. And then Sarah Talakio is interested in developing a new, this is a big one in terms of work, patient-reported outcome for overall well-being in Behçet's disease, a disease-specific outcome. There have been some, they are, like all such outcomes, flawed. There are thoughts that these are particularly flawed. And so the idea is to go and use more advanced methodology through patient input and other and proper approach to come up with a new instrument. She recognizes that is that's a big haul. I mean, it took us 5 years to do this in AAV, and we had funding and various things. So we'll see. So that will probably be the other half of the SIG, sort of get a sense of where to move forward. At the same time as we may start thinking about instrument selection. So we have an instrument that we think we can use for, call it health, really call it life, call it, but we could do better. And so it's where that's at. So that will be the Behçet's SIG, sort of two halves to try to advance the agenda. And these are things that are ongoing. It's a good time to get input because we're doing the work. I know there are questions about that. And then the large vessel vasculitis group, which I'm reconsidering what our role will be, because I think some of our members are having, as you probably know, although the attendance apparently is good for registration, there are people having difficulty acquiring funding, et cetera, for travel. I think things have changed. But the plan is to actually bring forward, again, we have a core set of domains. We have been doing some work on damage, so-called damage assessment, which is, thought to be irreversible impact of disease and treatment. And actually, we've done some comparative work across North America and Turkey and various cohorts, and we have data to bring to the topic of actually the idea of creating a new instrument to collect damage. And we're very interested in getting away from the traditional no attribution, where it doesn't matter if it's treatment or if it's disease. Many of us have found that to be, doesn't completely make sense, because we look at adverse events for damage, glucocorticoids and treatment. What you're treating when you treat disease is the change in damage to some extent. So in Takayasu's arteritis, for example, you notice that the artery is now narrowed. You treat what just happened because that's probably active disease. If they gain 40 pounds of glucocorticoids, that's bad. It's really bad, but it's not disease activity. And so we're trying to separate those concepts and bring an idea of how to move that forward. And it would latch on to an ACR EULAR project that's looking at response criteria. So the idea is we're going to bring our data on damage assessment and the instruments we have, and the idea of what do we do? How do you actually move forward, try to revise that and revise the instrument in a data-driven fashion? That will be good. And so I think that's plenty to talk about in a SIG. I mean, that's, show some data, get some discussion. I've been to SIGs that I've helped direct. I think less talk, more, fewer slides, more discussion, and bring ideas. If you can take 2 or 3 really good ideas out, you've done well.
Thank
So
you.
that's where we're at in the vasculitis world. You've heard about the scleroderma world, which is remarkably organized. The Dr. Proudman told you.
And I
Question?
didn't say this, what Susanna, when you were presenting for the scleroderma group, but they're the first group, and I've often called them our guinea pig group, who have sort of followed the OMERACT process since we sort of redefined it and created all of these like forms and processes. And so they've been learning along with us, and we've sort of taken a lot of the things that they've done and adjusted our processes. So I certainly appreciate them being patient with me because it's been a learning curve.
We've done something that we don't, I don't want to be branded as always doing that, but we've followed all the rules. And it was a weird, it was a weird space. And it's gone well. And we've adapted, and we've helped, I think, I think our voting was the first, right? Suzanne, I'm sure you told them about that. And so I think it really figured out, like, get some kinks out. We're fine. But it's been great. And I think patient input's been fantastic for there. We need to improve some of that for some of our other stuff, but it's been good. I agree.
Thank you.
Guinea pigs probably a reason. I've been called much worse, and I think guinea pigs are good because so guinea pigs are very social animals actually, and I believe this is actually true that in Switzerland, some countries, you're not allowed to own one. You have to own at least 2 because they're very social and they get lonely. That's actually true.
Then it's a perfect word for an OMERACT working group.
I have a question about something it's a little off topic, but something you did in the vasculitis group.
All right, I got 60 seconds. I'm supposed to be running up down the hall. Yeah.
Using 1,000 mines for the Delphi versus REDCap.
Okay, so this has come up for Dana Dorenzo. I'm probably going to ask me again
and
today.
Other groups as well.
She is down the hall. So we used 1,000 mines for conjoint analysis. That's what we did. We did not use it for Delphi. So I do not have any experience for how it works for Delphi. It seems like a very expensive way to do
Exactly.
Delphi.
Can you talk her out of it then? Because
well, we have to spend some money. I'll talk to her. Can she get some help on how to use it for REDCap? So that's been sort of
yes, and we can also talk to Wills about translation. So he presented for the SLE group. They're doing I think 12 languages. So we could spend money there.
Help her with thinking about the REDCap. That would be great. I will tell you that the 1,000 mines worked great for that, and I think we all are in agreement to never use Delphi Manager again. So
right, that's out. Yeah,
we'd have to anesthetize Shauna, and that would reduce meeting planning activities for Barcelona.
Or euthanasia, probably.
We could, but that's a different level of consent.
Thank you.
I have to run. I apologize.
Yes, thank you.
I look forward to seeing everybody in suburban Barcelona.
Yes, thank you. I'll see you this week. Thanks. Okay, great. So I think we only have 4 minutes, but Sharmila, were there other questions that people had for Sharmila? And she can send those slides if you want. Wow, you guys are good.
So one quick comment. This is Phil. Yeah. One of the things that we'll be tackling, and we tried to do it in this CorEvitas analysis, was so if you think about a Venn diagram, nosoplastic pain is one big circle, widespread pain index. Fibromyalgia is subsumed within that circle, but slightly smaller, because it includes all the other concepts of fatigue, sleep disturbance, depression, and so forth, in addition to the overall pain thing. So in CorEvitas, we separated the two by using Fred Wolf scales, which include the widespread pain index, which you could say is measuring nosoplastic pain, and then the when you add to it the symptom severity scale, then that constitutes fibromyalgia, depending on the scoring of the two. And we found 12% to have fibromyalgia and 20% to have widespread pain. So these are some of the concepts that we're trying to tease out. Is it worthwhile to have those concentric circles, for example, to define a nociplastic pain versus the overall concept of fibro, which really increasing number of studies are showing that by having WPI and or fibromyalgia, you can't get to your treatment target. Multiple studies that have shown, for example, in psoriatic arthritis, that you can't get to a state of minimal disease activity if those are present. So they really do. It doesn't just double the assessment. It means you can't get to a target of treatment when those pain types are present.
Yeah, so I agree with Phil. I think the thing is undoubted that the presence of nociplastic pain / fibromyalgia is a contextual factor. Just to make sure that I use the right OMRAC terminology, since Robin is on this call, I think that's proven many times over. So I think it is consistent with the whole concept of fibromyalgia-ness. So fibromyalgia is a threshold that we cut, but before that, we have this fibromyalgia state, which is actually a very what Phil is talking about, the bigger circle of the nociplastic pain is, but how to capture that, we still don't know. And I think as the ISP's definition stand, the last criterion is the most challenging, talking about the clinical sign, which is not really captured by prompts. That's a real issue at the moment.
Right, on that note, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to everyone for their updates. That's amazing. And April 15th is our next one. We'll have the rest of our group. Oh, Annalise is admitting. You know what? She just admitted. I bet you got the time wrong because of the
Yes, this is the worst time of year for calls.
Poor Annalise, but it's recorded. I'll explain. So thanks, everyone. We'll have our final before our meeting on April 15th. And if you have questions, additional questions that we didn't cover today, I think any of the groups who presented are always happy to receive an email from people. So thanks again and enjoy the rest of your